Hello, Nicholas here. How you doing? Today we are going to be talking about today's episode is episode 59. At least I remembered what the episode number is today. And it's been a while. So today I want us to discuss about what it feels like having to build a project for a client. Yes. Then the client ends up using it, let's say, for a year or two. Then they find another developer, and the developer starts working on the project. And maybe later on, they need you to do something, and you need to now work on it. So, in most cases, that is always a bad idea, right? So, I'm going to give you from my own personal experience, and you can take it up from there in making your decision on how you want to proceed if you enter into such a situation. Now, earlier on in my career, when I started as a freelancer, there are situations whereby I would work on a project, right? And hand it over to the client. And let's say in 2 years' time, the client will reach out to me that they want to change some things. And I'll go into the code base and I'll figure out that, okay, a lot of things we are going on here that I did not do that we are on the project. And I was very naive there because what I did was I would actually work on top of it. And I quickly noticed that whenever there was an issue, they will reach out to me. And most of the issues that we are occurring, we are not actually from my end. So I will end up spending hours, sometimes even days, because back then there was nothing like all this chat GPT, codex, all these AI tools. So you have to manually enter into the code to figure out what the issue is, to debug what the issue is. I think debugging is a lost art at this time in 2036. Anybody that is debugging with AI tools, left, right, center, I don't know. Maybe you just love to do that. But back then, you need to go into the code. I remember one particular project, same story though. The client said that there was an issue. I fixed the issue, thinking that it's not a big deal. Somebody's working on it. And something started happening with the project. And they will reach out to me and I'll be like, okay, this is not what I worked on. But the client is not really that happy because, okay, you should fix it, you built it, and although somebody worked on it and you did some other things on it, you should be able to fix whatever was done. And I kept on telling him that okay, he needs to reach out to the person that was working on top of it earlier on. That what he did is not something I can change because I don't know what it is connected to, right? And if he wants me to figure out everything that was done, he has to pay me, right? So that quickly led into a lot of confusion because obviously the client who does not is a non-technical founder, has no idea what's going on the platform, was now like, okay, let me connect you to the other guy so that the both of you would figure out what the issue is and the both of you can actually solve the problem. Now, that was a good idea, but the problem was that the other guy was unresponsive. So if I message him, okay, what's going on here with this function? What do we do with this? What do we do with that? No response. Like for like weeks. There was a time it took even up to 3 weeks for me to get a response back from him. So at the end of the day, I had to present the whole thing to the client, and I was like, okay, he's not responding. He's not actually giving me feedback on what I need to do. And the only way around this is for me to study it. And he had to pay me extra to study the entire code base. And I found out that actually he was actually stealing money from the client. So he was taking a little money and be adding it into his wallet balance as a user whenever the client made some money. And he in fact, he structured the entire admin portal in such a way whereby the admin could only see the amounts that he wanted the admin to see. So he was stealing it, and unfortunately, the client, he was not actually doing his calculations properly or verifying his calculations with what the admin was actually showing. So he just believed what was on the admin without doing proper verification. And, so it was a whole disaster during that period. They had to find the other developer with police and all this stuff. And I was grateful, at least during that period, I kept on staying in communication with the client to let him know what was going on. If not, my head would have been on the and I've forgotten what they call it, but I would have also been in trouble. But luckily for me, I was very careful, and that taught me a very important lesson. And that's the lesson I'm going to show you, tell you today, which is if I've done a handover of a project and somebody touches the code of that project, count me out. There's no way I'm working on it. If I'm going to work on it, there has to be a legal document clearly stating that if there is anything that goes wrong in this project, I am not going to be held liable, I'm not going to be held responsible, and I'm not also going to be held accountable. If there is no document of that sort, then there is no way I'm going to tamper with anything there, because you can never know what the other person was doing. Now, this, I'm not saying this thing because it happened to me once. It has happened to me so many times, but I was more careful after the first time. So there was a situation whereby the client, same thing, he got somebody else to work on top of what was done because the person was cheaper than what I was offering. And it was causing a lot of back and forth. It's not a, this time around, the other dev was not unresponsive. But whenever there is an issue, he'll say the issue is from my end. So, and it got very frustrating at some point. So you say the problem is from my end, is what I did earlier on that is causing it. And when I check, I'll now say, okay, it's actually from his end, and I'll now tell them it. I'll tell the client that the problem is from his end, not mine, with proof. It's no longer with just talking. I'll show him the proof, and he would see the proof, and he will go and fix it. So if it occurred again, you say the problem. So it turned out that I was the one doing the debugging for him. So he would do something, he will make a mistake, he will say the problem is from my end, they will reach out to me, I'll show them proof. We did this for like up to 5 times, to the point whereby the client now quickly found out that the problem was never from my end. And I had to tell them they should stop reaching out to me, because at that point, there was no issue from my end. So I prepared a well-detailed documentation and I handed it over to him. The reason why I did that was so that he would not have any other excuse to say the issue is from my end. Anything that he wants, there's a reference document that he can go through and actually read through and see how to fix it if there's an issue, because it happened so many times. I was the one doing debugging for him. So, I had to clear that out because it was taking my own time. Like I said, I need you to remember that back then, you had to do debugging into the code. You had to look into the code, manually check every single thing and do testing. Unlike now, where you can use AI tools to assist you with debugging. So it was a huge problem, and I was not happy with the whole communication back and forth. And at the end of the day, the client ended up rehiring me to clean the entire project, to refactor the entire project, because he quickly found out that cheap is not always the best in this game as software engineers, which is something we should always know. If you are trying to secure a client by being the cheapest, it's a race to the bottom. You would never really win, because um, they would they would they would, once they realize that even though you are giving it to them at a cheap value, your mind is not going to be there, because you'll be like, you feel like you're doing them a favor by offering them the cheap value. And whenever they reach out to you for an issue, you would feel like they are disturbing you. I've been there, and I know what I'm saying. So you feel like, is it not you that I'm doing this favor for just to do this stuff, and now you're now disturbing me with do this, do this, do that, do that. So if you want to feel at peace and feel comfortable, even if they have revisions or change this or change requests, the best thing is to just charge them a good amount of money that you're comfortable with, so that when they are now going through the revisions and fixes and all these things, you don't feel bad or feel like they are wasting your time, or they are taking advantage of you, because that's the most important thing. When you charge cheaply, you quickly feel like they are taking advantage of you, which usually is not just the case. It's just that you offer them a lower price, so what, in a nutshell, all I'm trying to say is this: if you build a project that you find solid, and somebody starts working on top of the project, and if there's an issue and they reach out to you, ensure to let them know that you do not do that. Well, the best thing you can do is prepare a release document, hand it over to the next developer, and if they insist that you should work on it, you charge them and you tell them to present you with a contract, or you present them with a contract that says you are not liable, responsible, or accountable if anything goes wrong. Because there has to be a developer that has to bear those legalities. It should not be you, because now somebody is working on top of it, and if somebody messes up what you've done, or if somebody leaks out your secrets, your environment configs, your keys, they should not come and hold you responsible when you actually are not the person wrong. I've seen a situation whereby a developer came in on a project and was very carefree with the cPanel login details. And, it made me very uncomfortable that I had to tell them, hey, we need to change this cPanel login details. We need to add Google authentication, and it has to only be the founder. And if anything goes wrong, they should not hold me, because the way he was sharing the cPanel login details, I found it very uncomfortable. And if somebody has access to your cPanel, they actually have access to your platform. They can do anything on your database or your files and everything. Not to talk of if you give them access to your AWS. I've seen a lot of mayhem caused by people not assigning the right roles in AWS console. Somebody will come in there and rake up billing of up to $1,000. So be very, very careful when working with a team that you are not, is not internal team, maybe like different contractors working on the same project. Sometimes, majority of the times, this is from my own personal experience, it leads to problems. So just listen to the steps I've laid out, so that in case there's an issue, we don't pray for issues, but in case there's an issue, nobody's ready to say that you are liable or you have to be held responsible for what you literally do not know anything about. That's all for today. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.